forget that no matter how powerful you become.
Ever since the first trailer of Spider-Man: A Brand New Day has dropped, there's one question that's giving every fan sleepless nights. Who will be Spidey's ultimate nemesis in this new movie? And now we have yet another sneak peek into what this movie is building towards. And one thing remains clear. The roster for Spider-Man's villains in this one is way too long. Naturally, we're skeptical whether everyone will get the screen time and story arc they deserve. And most importantly, who among all these foes will be Spider-Man's main villain? The internet is buzzing with theories, and after spending an unhealthy amount of time on them, here goes my 2 cents.
He's gonna get away with this.
But he might.
The Jean Grey theory. The unseen face in a hooded attire. Yes, that has messed with my mind pretty bad, and each passing day, the mystery about this character keeps getting thicker. However, we do have just enough crumbs of information to believe that this anonymous character is none other than Jean Grey, played by Sadie Sink. The rumor that Sadie Sink is Jean Grey began as early as late 2024, when reports began cropping up from the industry insiders and scoopers. Jeff Snyder was the first insider who floated the casting rumor back in December 2024. And guess what? He's now claimed that his original report was real, and said, "It's true, I hear that she is in fact playing Jean Grey." See, we already know that we're getting a mutant with extremely powerful telekinetic powers being chased by the Department of Damage Control. And if you look really closely, you'll notice a mind-controlling superhuman with red hair in a green jumpsuit, which is Jean's iconic color palette. Sadie herself spilled on The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon that she found out about the role online 2 days before getting the official call from Marvel, and stated, "I found out through online theories. Before I got cast in Spider-Man, there was speculation online that said Sadie Sink is gonna be in the new Spider-Man. I was like, I am?" Sure enough, 2 days later, they asked me to do it. So yeah, those theories, there's sometimes some truth to it. Yep, she's basically connected the dots for us. Top it off with a dialogue about a threat we can't even see, and Holland framing the movie as a mystery about an unknown villain. Jean fits perfectly in the role of psychic antagonist pulling strings from the shadows. Interestingly, Sadie actually is a good choice for Jean's role because she proved how well she can handle herself in an ensemble cast without overshadowing the lead. That's exactly how Jean Grey needs to be introduced in Peter Parker's movie. Sink's work as Max in Stranger Things showed that she can demonstrate a wide range in character. How exactly can Jean Grey be the villain? Okay, so my best bet is Jean will be held as the primary antagonist, but she won't be an out-and-out malevolent being. See, Marvel fans have known Jean for a long time, and are familiar with both her good and flawed features. Jean is undoubtedly one of the most powerful telepaths and telekinetics in the Marvelverse, with a long history of mental possession, manipulation, and even cosmic corruption through the Phoenix Force. Remember the Dark Phoenix Saga storyline of 1980? Yes, the multi-issue, frankly legendary story arc where Jean was consumed by the Cosmic Phoenix Force and was manipulated by the Hellfire Club member Mastermind, which made her unhinged. And that mental fracture corrupted her into the Dark Phoenix. It's thus a proven point that Jean is extremely volatile and has become a threat to the people she loved time and time again, and worse, and can also be weaponized by outside forces. And then again, Jean has also been hunted down for mutant status, and her powers have been represented as terrifying to the governments. Take X-Men Phoenix Insong of 2005, for example, or House of X 2019. In X-Men the Animated Series, there's an episode called Night of the Sentinels, where the Mutant Control Agency, MCA, registers mutants with the government, with the Sentinels acting as the physical enforcement that hunts them down. This frames mutants as something the state needs to track and control. It showed how identity was being treated as a threat, which once again aligns with the idea of a DODC-style organization in Brand New Day trying to contain a powerful mutant like Jean Grey. You get the drift, right? We have the DODC after a powerful mutant and an anti-mutant bureaucrat, William Bill Metzger, who has every reason to try to contain or exploit her. The fact that Jean's character has so much room to incorporate themes of moral dilemmas and psychological pressure, it justifies the possibility of using her in a Spider-Man story. We know that Trammell Tillman's character is named Bill, and oh boy, does he come off as a corporate jerk. It's possible that Bill Metzger and the Department of Damage Control take Jean hostage and experiment on her in an attempt to weaponize her. Such treatment might push her into a panic state where Jean becomes unstable and her powers lash out uncontrollably. Once again, that hints the main comic storyline Marvel might be using for Brand New Day is that of the Dark Phoenix Saga, where Jean becomes a villain more out of trauma and external pressure, not because she's inherently evil. It's also probable that Jean will project herself in the minds of Peter, MJ, or even Hulk as a cry for help or to defend herself. This might end up involuntarily conveying the idea that Jean is the one responsible for reality-warping crimes, and she gets falsely attributed as a monster. That would mean Peter initially misunderstands Jean and thinks that he's chasing some demonic or otherworldly threat, only to realize that Jean is just a frightened mutant who's in as much pain as he is. Now, I have a solid reason to believe this, and it's because of the huge gallery of villains Brand New Day is about to offer. Let me explain. Peter might be the only one who can see Sadie Sink's character as a hidden threat because of his Spidey sense, while everyone else focuses on the more visible villains, like Tarantula or the Hand. Now, there's also news on the grapevine that Jean, though an enemy at first, would eventually join hands with Spider-Man against common foes, and I guess that's good food for thought. The Shathra theory. If you're a Spider-Man comics nerd, I'm sure you've read about this obscure villain, Shathra. Sure, Shathra is not as mainstream as Doc Ock or Green Goblin, but she is a goddamn creepy wasp-like entity. Shathra is basically considered a supernatural spider-wasp goddess and cosmic predator from the astral plane, who learned about Peter when he accidentally visited her realm. So what does this otherworldly entity have to do with Spidey? The thing is, Shathra actually feeds on spider totems, pretty much similar to how spider wasps hunt spiders in nature. Naturally, that makes Peter her prey. Shathra first appeared in 2002 in Volume 2, Issue 46 of The Amazing Spider-Man, created by J. Michael Straczynski and John Romita Jr., and this living nightmare is known for manipulating perceptions. Though she has a paralytic sting and can nearly immobilize Spider-Man, using psychological tactics against Spider-Man is her favorite game plan, and in her debut, she almost exposed Peter's identity on national television. She thus tried using the public sphere against Spider-Man to frame him as some horrible creature. Shathra can also shapeshift into human form to toy with people's minds and create illusions and corrupt realities, which means she can actually control how others perceive Spider-Man, and that fits thematically the mind control concept in the rumors. Love how fans thrive on finding a thread and pulling it into something much bigger. The idea that Sadie Sink's mysterious character might be an MCU interpretation of Shathra is already floating. But hey, there are reasons to think so even if Shathra isn't supported by the leaked details as strongly as Jean Grey is. For starters, it seems that Brand New Day might be balancing two types of villains. One, street-level threats like Boomerang and Tarantula, and two, something that feels a lot more psychological and honestly, even borderline mystical, which is where Shathra starts making sense. Moreover, we do have clear examples of supernatural elements in the story, with the Hand being a part of it, so a totemic predator like Shathra can very well be a part of the broader narrative. Last but not least, the rumored man-spider transformation also points towards Shathra's capabilities because her whole deal is about destabilizing spider totems, and that can organically overlap with Spider-Man's mutation and can allow Brand New Day to lean toward a more body horror story. But then again, most rumor breakdowns suggest that Jean Grey is the more probable answer, with Shathra existing more as a what-if option. Now, even if it turns out to be Shathra, how would she fit in? We have the Unseen Force as the base for this because it's unlikely for Shathra to appear openly as some grotesque cosmic insect queen. She might start as a simple and normal young woman whose real form or influence exists in another dimension that only Spider-Man can understand to some extent. And with Shathra in the scene, Peter's inability to trust his body and senses actually becomes clearer, and we can understand why he couldn't figure out what was happening to him in the trailer. Shathra might be able to turn New York against him, and that's where the DODC might enter, because for her, Peter's anatomy and his entire identity as Spider-Man makes him a point of interest in a larger cosmic system. The Typhoid Mary theory. If we try to stitch the Typhoid Mary angle into the same Brand New Day speculation thread, surprisingly, it matches pretty well. But first, let me tell you how Marvel has used Typhoid Mary all along. She was first introduced in issue 254 of Daredevil in 1988. Also known as Mary Walker or Bloody Mary, she's a mutant with low levels of psionic powers, including telekinesis. When Mary left her abusive father and ended up in New York City, she wanted to be a performer, but fate pulled her into working for criminal organizations. In her debut, she was hired as an assassin by none other than the Kingpin, to hunt Matt Murdock, and over time, she's been involved romantically with both Wilson Fisk and Matt before marrying Fisk. Now, 3 aliases of Mary actually point to her 3 personalities, because she has dissociative personality disorder. Her Mary version is quiet and timid, while the Typhoid version is adventurous and violent. And lastly, her bloody personality is absolutely sadistic. Mary also has pyrokinetic powers and is highly skilled in martial arts. In issues 213 and 214 of the comic, The Spectacular Spider-Man, Mary fought the web-slinger with her bloody personality resurfaced, and she began killing men who committed domestic abuse. However, when she regained her control with Spidey's help, she did turn herself into the police and sought treatment. So what are our key takeaways from here? Of course, the telekinetic powers and the fact that Mary is not an inherently malicious person. Rather, she's a victim of her own mind and gets perceived as dangerous, which can explain the DODC's involvement. Also, the fact that she struggles with her own self and has martial arts skills can fill in the puzzle pieces where Sadie Sink's Typhoid Mary gets hired by the Hand and is experimented on as an asset. That's exactly where the fan theory gets its traction, because Mary doesn't need cosmic powers to destabilize Peter. She can just use perception and psychological warfare. And there are multiple instances in the comic where she actually operates as a walking paradox, with each personality influencing a different viewpoint. Even in Typhoid Fever Spider-Man of 2018, her role leans heavily into reality warping and creating illusions rather than using physical force. And guess what? In this comic, Mary was deeply connected to the trouble caused in Hell's Kitchen. And we do have Punisher in Brand New Day, so the math is mathing. I guess now we know why fans are bringing her into these MCU theories whenever psychic-like chaos shows up in rumors. Oh, also, she can target Peter's feelings of loneliness and his heartbreak for having to let go of MJ. You know, just a thought. The Madelyne Prior Jean Grey hybrid theory. Yep, we're back to Jean Grey, because as much as I would love to get surprised in the theaters, the evidence is just way too strong that the unknown villain is Jean. Madelyne Prior is basically a clone of Jean Grey in the comics, created by Mr. Sinister, who first debuted in issue 168 of Uncanny X-Men in 1983. At first, she came off as an ordinary woman who resembled Jean Grey. However, over time, she married Cyclops and became the mother of Cable, and even transformed into the reality-distorting villain Goblin Queen. Madelyne has a deep-seated grudge against both Jean and the X-Men. It's thus possible that it's actually Madelyne who creates hell in Spider-Man's life and frames Jean for it, letting the DODC misunderstand her as the ultimate mutant threat. There have been instances where she forcibly connected her mind to Jean's and caused her immense pain, and thus the theories about Madelyne being the real villain instead of the real Jean make sense. If it works out, then Sadie Sink would be playing contradictory elements in a single character, and she could be a mutant telepath who mirrors Jean's darker side. Madelyne's origin can be reimagined in Brand New Day as someone who has been created by some secret program and can justify the Hand's involvement. As an evil clone of Jean Grey, Madelyne can invade Peter's mind and cause visual disturbances. Coming to comic arcs Brand New Day can borrow from, we have the Inferno storyline, where Madelyne becomes the Goblin Queen after being manipulated by demons and unleashes hell on the X-Men. And then there's the 2022 Dark Web, where Madelyne allied with Spider-Man's clone, Ben Reilly, to wreak havoc in New York, which forced Spider-Man and the X-Men to unite. We don't have any reports that identify Sadie Sink's character as a Jean Grey Madelyne Prior fusion, but given Marvel Studios' history of bringing together multiple comic characters into streamlined MCU adaptations, a Jean Madelyne hybrid can offer a plausible way to create a villain who's both sympathetic and extremely dangerous. Who is William Metzger, and how is he rumored to fit in as a villain? If the scoopers are right and Marvel has indeed picked up William Metzger to play an antagonist, then they have really dug deep. Yes, Trammell will be playing Bill Metzger as per reports in the trailer breakdowns, but this character has a comic lore too, albeit an extremely obscure one. He debuted in 1999 in the X-Men Children of the Atom miniseries, and was depicted as an anti-mutant protester and politician. Metzger used public fear in the comics and even led an anti-mutant militia. Wait, I haven't yet disclosed the biggest connection. In that story arc, he even kidnapped a young Jean Grey before she became part of the X-Men. And if Brand New Day pulls from this storyline, then he's directly tied to Jean Grey's character. Metzger can now employ the DODC to continue his propaganda against mutants. And if Sadie Sink is indeed playing Jean Grey, or even a Jean Madelyne hybrid, her ties with Metzger run really deep. This would make Metzger the final villain, and Brand New Day might just opt for a human antagonist rather than going for anything supernatural. Alright guys, that's it for today. Spider-Man Brand New Day is building up the hype perfectly, and the fact that Marvel has not yet revealed the true villain in this movie seems like a smart move. It's kept fans on their toes, and we aren't complaining, spending our days speculating who Spidey's adversaries might be. Yes, Jean Grey is at the top of this table, but I would love to see if Marvel has something bigger planned for us. Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below, and if you like this video, do consider hitting that bell icon. Bye-bye!